spectacular reappearance in the gaming industry just over the last few short years. I'm Falcon, and today on Game Ranks, the best co-op games coming in 2017. Number 10 is Rare's Sea of Thieves, an action-adventure game built on the idea that the community should create its own narrative. To run a ship, you'll need to cooperate, either with friends or randoms from around the world, and you'll partake in a communal treasure hunt where you'll go all in and essentially yo-ho, a pirate's life for me all over the place. It really looks like a high-quality game, and if it turns out to be even half of what it's promised to be, Sea of Thieves is probably going to be at least one of the most interesting multiplayer games out there, and cooperatively playing in its open-world multiplayer environment is at least going to be something new. Number 9 is Cuphead, which is, by the way, one of the coolest looking games just in existence, just based on pure style. They've taken the aesthetic of old Disney movies and made it into a game, all the way up to the visual distortion that one might expect with an old film, and have given you a two-player co-op game that promises to be frenetic bullet hell / platforming action. The game is based very much around the idea of traditional run and gun stuff, all the way down to the exploits of hitboxes. This game has been in the works a while and we've never lost excitement for it. It really looks like it's going to be a big deal for anybody who likes this kind of game. Number 8 is Fortnite, which is a co-op sandbox game built primarily around the idea of building. The emphasis in the title is on the word fort. In some ways, if Team Fortress had never existed in the form we all know it as, it might be an appropriate name for what this game actually is. Epic Games sort of put together a Minecraft meets Left 4 Dead situation, at least according to its founder, Tim Sweeney, in which you have to scavenge for items, craft with materials, and build a fort defending yourself from zombies over a period of 14 days, hence Fortnite, which is, if you're aware, how long a fortnight is. I have a feeling this is going to be one of those really good co-op but competitive games where people come up with so many different ways to compete. For instance, who has the best team that lasts the longest against the most enemies, and then there's also the PvP mode that's going to be included. Number 7 is State of Decay 2, which is said to have a much more cooperative element to it. The sequel to the very big zombie survival game is one of those projects that we've been very excited about during the time that it's being developed, and really before we even knew for sure. Something we think is really cool about this is that they're launching with 3 maps, each of them the size of the first game, and that there may be more maps to come. They want to end up fostering more difference between the types of gameplay you need for different areas, and it's all fairly exciting because even if the point wasn't more community, more co-op oriented gameplay, it'd still be a bigger and better State of Decay, which State of Decay is great. Number 6 is Crackdown 3, and yes, we are going to talk about this game until it comes out, because Crackdown 3 is the game where you can destroy the big city. And eventually it's finally going to come to us, and we're finally going to take down a whole city together. It's been a long time, and there's not that many games with extremely destructible environments, but here we do have Crackdown. And I could probably talk about how long we waited for this game more than I could even talk about exactly what this game is, but frankly, it is actually going to be one of the coolest games ever made because, hey, do you remember all the cool stuff about Red Faction? You remember how it was kind of limited because the technology of the day couldn't quite give us everything we wanted out of it? This is like that without those limits. Just blow up a city, blow it up, done. Buildings coming down everywhere. All it has to do is just deliver on that, and I'm ready for it. Frankly, doesn't even really need that great of co-op gameplay, although I'm sure part of the reason for the many delays is that they want the gameplay to be perfect, and I'm okay with that. At least for a little while longer, I'm okay with that. Number 5 is Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands, which really took a different approach for the Tom Clancy series, giving you an open-world tactical shooter. But as with any Tom Clancy, the real main attraction is working together as a team. Frankly, the entire Tom Clancy series excels at this, and even plopping it into an open world pretty much didn't mess that up in any way. It's fantastic, team-based gameplay, and although it has seen a pretty large change in moving into the open world, and that transition hasn't been perfect, it still is a very good game. Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon, though, typically pretty good. Number 4 is Halo Wars 2, a military science fiction real-time strategy game that shockingly builds on the first game in such a great way, it's hard to believe they completely changed devs. Now, it's important to note that this is not a perfect game. It is not a super in-depth tactical game. However, as far as being a good RTS to play with friends, really tough to beat this one, especially if you have friends that are more interested in just the experience of playing together as opposed to, like I said, really in-depth strategy playing. This is an accessible game. Now that doesn't mean it's an easy or simple game, it's simply a game that is not built for micromanagement. What's odd is how well the gamepad works in this compared to how you might expect, given a RTS is basically the type of game you would play on a keyboard and mouse. They managed to tighten up all the concepts to really actually work pretty well with the controller, and that's, I think, why it's such a good co-op game, because it really is one of those games you can just sit down and play without learning a whole hell of a lot. That said, it is an RTS, it is a little more complex than, say, an FPS, but still, some people want that. It's a little of column A, a little of column B. For a lot of people, that's great. For some, it's so-so, but I really like Halo Wars 2. Number 3 is Divinity Original Sin 2, and just like the original Divinity Original Sin, which is, by the way, quite a mouthful, multiplayer can be competitive or it can be cooperative. But what's more interesting about this is how you can have characters interact with each other. You can establish friendships, romantic relationships, or even rivalries, and how that's going to come into play as far as cooperative play. I'm very interested because Divinity Original Sin is, it's pretty much a primo game. Considering both of these titles were kickstarted, the original and this sequel, it's quite impressive what they've accomplished. Original Sin took an early access route and throughout really developed quite a bit, and the final should be a really good game. Number 2 is Sniper Elite 4, which is set in 1943 Italy, which has significantly larger maps than its predecessor, and really did a good job opening up the gameplay. It's set immediately after Sniper Elite 3, there's rumors of a new Nazi weapon, and you're a sniper and or group of snipers with the skills and wherewithal to take them out. It's a little more complex than that, but these lists don't exist to spoil the plot of every game. Finally, number 1 is the big one, Destiny 2. Destiny's an interesting one. When it first came out, it really struggled to find exactly what it's, attempting to be. Had some really wonky voice acting, and just wasn't sure what they wanted from it. But the game itself, though it took a little bit of time, did really find its legs. It found what it wanted to be, and it created a style of gameplay that is pretty unique to Destiny. In some ways, it's kind of like Journey's multiplayer if Journey was in fact a first-person shooter, but it's not the only way to play the multiplayer either. There's much more traditional party making if you really want, and I would assume that Destiny 2 is probably going to be the same. Bungie did a really good job of making this into a solid game over time, and Destiny 2 will benefit from all that experience. It's obviously not just big open world multiplayer Halo. There's a lot more to it, and I'm excited for when they start out with all of that type of experience just built into the game, where they'll build from there. Some bonus games for you. For Honor, first, is a hack and slash game in which 3 factions fight with each other, and yes, it does actually play pretty sweet. Toukiden 2, the sequel to the hunting action game. This is a pretty standard hack and slash game with a surprising amount of depth. And Overkill's The Walking Dead, which may just be all the experience that